Let me ask you something. When you look at your life right now, the choices you've made, the roles you're playing, the version of yourself you present to the world every single day, does it actually feel like yours? Because there's this moment that some women have, and if you've had it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, where the life you're living starts to feel like a costume and not a particular comfortable one. It's a little itchy, it's a little suffocating, and there's this growing, unsettling awareness that it was never yours to begin with. If that's landing somewhere in your chest right now, stick with me because this video is for you. So many women arrive at this moment and say the same thing. I'm lost. And I get it. I said it too repeatedly. I built entire seasons of my life around the identity of a woman searching for something she couldn't name. But here's a reframe I want to offer you today, and it's one that changed everything for me. What if you're not lost? What if you've simply found yourself living the wrong life? Someone else's version of yours. Because lost, if I'm being honest, lets us off the hook a little too easily. It suggests we somehow wandered off the path by accident. But living someone else's life, that requires us to look at the choices we've made, the things we've said yes to, the version of ourselves we agreed to perform, often for years, sometimes for decades. That's a harder thing to sit with, and it's also a far more useful one. So let me tell you about one of my moments. In my 20s, I worked in the legal industry in the city, and I had always been, let's call it a little alternative. I loved op shops. I loved finding something no one else had for next to nothing and making it feel completely like me. There was genuine joy in that, but slowly, almost unnoticeably, something shifted. Daily exposure to label clothing, colleagues in polished pieces, a culture that quietly equated appearance with credibility. And before I'd fully registered what was happening, I was spending half of my very modest wage on clothes that didn't resonate with me at all. Labels I bought not because I loved them, but because I had absorbed the message that they were what someone in my industry should be wearing. And here's the thing, I see it in hindsight, it was never just about the clothes. The clothes were simply the most visible symptom of something much deeper. The legal profession, the city, the whole carefully constructed presentation of professional Tina. It was all costume, all performance, all someone else's idea of what success and credibility looked like. And I had been quietly, obediently trying it on. The moment I truly clocked that was uncomfortable in a way that's hard to articulate because it wasn't just a career realization. It was the recognition that I had drifted so far from my own instincts that I couldn't remember the last time I made a choice that was genuinely, unapologetically me. So how do you know if this is you? Because here's the thing, when you're in it, it feels completely normal. You don't openly question that nagging feeling. You just keep moving. But look for these. A persistent low-level restlessness you can't quite name or shake. And you normalize it because life looks fine from the outside. And admitting you want something more feels ungrateful, even selfish. A hollow feeling you can't quite articulate. Success by every measurable standard, and yet something fundamentally feels missing. Envy of women who move through the world with genuine ease and excitement, followed immediately by guilt for feeling it. That cycle alone is exhausting. And decision making that feels harder than it should be because you've spent so long consulting everyone else's compass that you genuinely lost touch with your own. Sound familiar? Here's something that gave me one of the most profound reframes in my life, and it comes from Kabbalah. The basic idea is this: there are two versions of you. There is the soul, the deepest, truest part of you that arrived in this life with a very specific blueprint, a purpose, a way of moving through the world that is entirely and uniquely yours. And then there's the personality, the version of you that formed through your experiences, your environment, your conditioning. Everything that the world taught you about who you needed to be, to belong, to be loved, and to be safe. Neither one is wrong, but they are very different. And when we spend years living primarily from the personality layer, we drift further and further from the soul's original blueprint. That restlessness you've been feeling, that low hum of something's off that you keep trying to outrun or outachieve, that is not anxiety. That is not ingratitude. That is your soul nudging you. And honestly, she's been remarkably patient. And here's what we need to talk about more. Maintaining a version of yourself that isn't true is exhausting, not just emotionally, energetically, spiritually, physically exhausting. The tension that lives in your shoulders that never quite leaves, that fatigue that sleep just doesn't fix, the anxiety that hums beneath even your good days, the disconnection from yourself that you can't quite explain to anyone else because from the outside everything looks fine. That is not weakness. That is the very real, very physical cost of living out of alignment for an extended period of time. Your body is not failing you. It is trying to tell you something. So what now? First, grief is allowed. I want to name that clearly because it often gets skipped over in the rush to fix things. The grief of years spent living someone else's version of your life is real and it deserves to be honored, not hurried. And second, this is not about burning your life down. The path back to yourself is far quieter than that. It begins with something deceptively simple. Learning to ask better questions. Not what should I do? Because that question automatically sends you outside yourself for the answers. But what do I actually want? And then sitting with the discomfort that question surfaces, because it will, especially at first. Here's what I've come to understand about those adaptive parts of yourself. The ones that learn to perform, to please, to shrink, to manage. They didn't develop because something was wrong with you. They developed because they were protecting you and they did their job extraordinarily well. But a protector who was essential at 7 doesn't necessarily need to be running the show at 47. Part of coming home to yourself is learning to thank those parts for their service, genuinely, without blame, and gently letting them know you've got it from here. You are not a renovation project. You are an excavation. The woman you're looking for, the one who knows herself so deeply that she doesn't need external validation to remain standing. She is not someone you need to become. She is someone you need to remember. So here's my invitation to you. One question. Sit with it honestly. What dreams have you been afraid to admit you have? That flicker of recognition that you might be feeling right now, that quiet yes, that's me somewhere in your chest, that is worth following. If you want to go deeper with this work, I'll link everything you need below. Ways we can work together when you're ready. If this resonated, I would love for you to subscribe. I'm planning on putting out new content on a regular basis, and I have something very exciting coming later in 2026.